career, right? Jon Jones wins the title in 2011, and from then on has fought more fights as championship fights than he has other fights. So he's the most accomplished.
I remember when I locked out there as far as static strength goes, I've never felt anything like that. Here's what we never had. I never guard the work. He grabs both my wrists. I can't sit for a second. I can't release his grip. He literally shoots his ass out, pulls his ankles behind him, and stands up with my hands.
I want to be undisputed champ. Feel like I deserve a shot. That being said, I'm also a professional fighter and I'm not fighting at the moment. That isn't really my fault though. That's more to do with the UFC. They really want to make the fight.
Jon Jones is officially back in training camp, preparing for a return against interim champion Tom Aspinall. While the UFC has yet to formally announce the bout, all signs indicate that the heavyweight unification clash is expected to take place in late 2025. This would mark Jones's first appearance in the octagon, since he withdrew from the Stipe Miocic fight due to injury in 2023.
Showing up for a paycheck, that's not this Stipe of old, that was in his prime anymore. So, I don't think anything special with that performance. I think Jon needs to stop ducking Tom Aspinall, just like he ducked Nagano. He ducked Nagano for years. Now he's ducking Aspinall. So he doesn't want to fight the guys he knows he's getting his ass whooped against. So I don't think anything special with Jon Jones.
Joe Rogan is confident the fight is happening. On his podcast, Rogan said, "Jon Jones is going to fight Tom Aspinall. That's what I believe. I believe that fight is going to happen." He added, "Jon is not a guy who backs down. I don't think he's done. I think he's going to fight Tom and then fade away into the mist. That's going to be the end of the Jon Jones era." After watching Jones's training videos, Rogan compared him to a conqueror, emphasizing that he never simply
who is the GOAT. I think if you look at Jon Jones's early career, right? Jon Jones wins the title in 2011, and from then on has fought more fights as championship fights than he has other fights. So he's the most accomplished for sure. Wins the title, earliest, youngest guy to ever win the title in the UFC. Beats Mauricio Shogun Rua, who's a legend. And then the way he dominates all these other fighters, up until you get to Alexander Gustafsson, you could make the argument.
He's not the kind of guy who just sits back. Reflecting on Jon Jones's evolution, Joe Rogan highlighted how Jones developed a spinning back kick to the body at age 36, a strike that ended the Miocic fight. Rogan noted that this was not a technique Jones had used in the past, but something he added later in his career. Perhaps most telling was Rogan's comment on how Jones's talent extended beyond physical ability, saying he didn't even train that hard for many of his past fights, often partying throughout camp, yet still dominated due to his incredibly high fight IQ. Now that he's training seriously, Rogan suggested, that's a terrifying prospect.
Kick at 36. Didn't have a spinning back kick his whole career, and then all of a sudden knocks out Stipe with a spinning back kick for the heavyweight title at 36, 37 years old. That's crazy.
At 36 years old, Jon Jones landed a spinning back kick, a move he hadn't used throughout his entire career, to knock out Stipe Miocic and win the heavyweight title, which is nothing short of incredible. Meanwhile, across the ocean, Tom Aspinall has been waiting since his knockout win over Sergey Pavlovich to claim the interim title, and later defended it in July 2024 against Curtis Blades in Manchester. He's been training, staying ready, and making it clear that there's only one name he wants, Jon Jones. But with no official date confirmed, frustration is mounting, especially from his father and coach Andy Aspinall, who hasn't held back. "The whole thing is stupid," Andy said in an interview. "We don't know what's going on, to be honest. We're being told by the UFC to stay tuned, and Tom's been told to tell people to stay tuned. And that's it." He added, "We had a meeting with Hunter, and he said that's the fight they're trying to make. But that was months ago. It's May now, and we still don't know anything."
People are starting acting surprised. Jones a duck, this, that, and the other. Jon Jones ducked Francis Ngannou for 3 years. Don't be surprised that this guy always takes fights where he's
That bluntness reflects the growing sentiment that Jon Jones and the UFC are dragging this out unnecessarily. Andy Aspinall put it plainly. "He's a fighter. Fighters fight. I don't know what he's doing. Just say what you're doing and get on with it." Meanwhile, Tom Aspinall remains composed but candid, saying, "I'm in the gym twice a day like a top-level athlete should be, and I'm just waiting around. I want to fight Jon Jones and become the undisputed champion. But right now, I'm sitting here with an interim belt and no opponent. He also expressed concern about his career stalling, adding, "I don't want to be like Michael Chandler, who's been out for over a year waiting on a fight that might not happen. It's a bit of a nightmare."
Doesn't matter about John. I'm trying to be the undisputed heavyweight champion. That's it. Or it is the interim heavyweight championship. Does that bother you? I'm currently ranked #1 in the world, which is amazing. Yeah. But I want to be known as the best. I think there should be like one face, one name, every division. I obviously want it to be me, whereas John's like doing some weird stuff about it. Problem is the fact that he's sitting on the belt and not doing anything. For me personally,
I'm not asking for much. Just a fair shot. I want to fight Jon Jones. That's it. That's the only fight that makes sense right now. I've defended the interim title. What more do you want me to do? Tom Aspinall said. His father, Andy, echoed the same concern, pointing out that while Tom could fight someone else in the meantime, doing so risks a loss that could erase the opportunity to face Jon Jones forever. It's once in a lifetime. You don't get another chance. At that, Andy said. Meanwhile, Jones has remained mostly quiet about the timeline, but he has dropped subtle hints, one of the most telling being a photo he posted of his UFC fight poster wall, which showed every past event he's fought on.
And of course, it's been pretty interesting, all the stuff that Jon Jones has been saying to the media this week, and I'm sure there's more to come, but check out these.
You're beating guys who aren't even champions, and you consider yourself a champion. He's not a champion.
So John said I need to fight more champions, but this is the problem I've got. John is the champion, and he won't fight me. And he says that he won't fight me because it's too much.
The blank space where the UFC 309 poster, originally for his scheduled fight against Miocic, should be, still hasn't been filled. Jones explained, "I still haven't put my UFC 309 poster up. Been moving a little too fast lately. That one last perfect spot on the wall is still left." He reflected on the significance of the display, saying, "Each of these posters represents different stages of my journey. Every last one of them with their own story, beating legends of different generations, constantly evolving, learning, new skills and making it look easy." Then came the line that caught fans' attention. "This wall is almost complete, but I still got work to do. The best is yet to come."
I'm going to go on record and say it. I think Jon Jones is the greatest fighter of all time. I think the Tom Aspinall fight will happen, and I think Jon Jones submits Tom Aspinall round 2. I said it. Tom can go out and knock out Jon and make me look silly, but I have to see it, Tom. So, for right now, I'm riding with Jon Jones. I'm riding with the greatest fighter of all time.
That sounds like a man planning a return, not a retirement. Despite the injury rumors and repeated delays, Jon Jones is speaking like someone who isn't finished yet. UFC President Dana White hasn't done much to clear up the uncertainty either. When asked about the fight during a media scrum in Kansas City, he responded, "Don't listen to anything that doesn't come from me. We're working on it. It's the fight we want. I'm super confident it's going to happen."
Another big one is obviously Jon versus Tom Aspinall. This week was a funny one. Someone reported that the fight's done, it's got a date, then the next day someone reported the fight's off, and Jon's not taking it. Where do we stand with that fight?
Everything you hear is bullshit until we say it.
So that fight is still the target for both men?
I've said it many times that that's the fight that we want to make this year. Yeah.
At the beginning of the year, you said you were super confident. It's definitely going to happen. Are you still super confident?
The only real test left is Jon Jones. Jones, meanwhile, has his own legacy to consider. He's the youngest UFC champion in history, with undefeated wins over legends like Shogun, Rampage, Machida, Rashad, Glover, Cormier, and most recently, Cyril Gane. His move to heavyweight was brief but dominant, though the Miocic withdrawal changed the trajectory. Now that he's healthy again, he has one last chance to remind everyone who he is. If it happens, Jones versus Aspinall would be one of the most anticipated heavyweight title fights in UFC history. A true passing of the torch, or a reaffirmation of greatness.
Coffee done, coffee chicken, coffee go, coffee down. I got a high school anymore, guys. Grown man out there kicking the game. Fight up in the real world for being called up. Should affect me.
That's a strong statement, but still no official date has been set. Meanwhile, Aspinall remains stuck in limbo. As of May, He surpassed Renan Barone for the longest reign as an interim champion in UFC history, 534 days, a record nobody wants to break. To be clear, Aspinall isn't asking for special treatment. He just wants to do what champions are supposed to do: defend belts, fight top contenders, and unify titles. But none of that can happen without the other half showing up. Reports suggest Jones requested a full 6-month training camp before facing Aspinall. If that's true, and the camp starts now, the fight wouldn't take place until October or November at the earliest. And if the announcement is delayed further, it could even be pushed into early 2026.
Engage with the wrestling and engage with the clinch, but I touched him early on and adrenaline kicked in. I just tossed out the game plan. No excuse. He was the better man that night. All the
There's also
praise.
the slim possibility that Jones is still trying to set up a fight with Stipe Miocic, whom he has repeatedly called his ideal last opponent. However, with no momentum behind that matchup, and Miocic also currently inactive, it seems more likely that Jones has finally shifted his focus toward Aspinall. From a competitive standpoint, this fight makes the most sense. Aspinall boasts the best statistics in the division: shortest average fight time, most finishes in under 2 minutes, sharp striking, fluid movement, and legitimate jiu-jitsu. But he's not just a numbers guy. He's proven it against top competition. Sergey Pavlovich, a known knockout artist, was caught early, and Curtis Blades was overwhelmed and shut down. Aspinall has already shown he's a serious
thoughts
challenge.
on Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall, and if they fought, who do you think would win?
Joe Jones. Advantage of the really tough Jones will be prepared if he will have the two back and Tom.
And it's weird how the fan base switches up. Number one, 20 years, and then new big guy comes around, John goes to heavyweight.
The entire MMA community has been dragged through months of speculation, teases, and calculated PR spins about a unification bout that, as of now, feels more like a mirage than a concrete plan. What began as hopeful talk about the biggest heavyweight showdown in years has morphed into frustration. With International Fight Week fast approaching and fans still no closer to seeing Aspinall versus Jones, the narrative has shifted once again. It's now clear that Tom Aspinall will defend his interim belt against former champion Cyril Gane at UFC 317 in Las Vegas, while Jon Jones continues to play a long game that many are beginning to see as little more than strategic stalling, or worse, dodging the fight altogether.
The Aspinall-Jones fight happens.
Got to happen. I was sitting next to Tom the other week at the UFC in London and talking to him about it.
How do you think that plays out if they fight?
I'll be honest, Tom's a friend. I love Tom. He's one of the coolest dudes in the whole of MMA. Even though Jones is getting old, I just can't pick against Jon Jones. The one thing I do think Jon Jones has got the best in the world and the best ever is his fight IQ. He has a perfect game plan to beat that person. As much as I love Tom and I want Tom to win, I couldn't pick against
This isn't
Jon.
just about business anymore. It's starting to feel personal. The UFC has never shied away from manufacturing chaos to keep interest high, but this particular mess seems to be spiraling beyond their control. UFC analyst Den Thomas was the first to go public with the developing reality. Speaking to Mike Bone, Thomas didn't hedge his bets. If I had to put my money on it, I think they would have convinced Tom Aspinall to fight Cyril Gane. That statement wasn't just speculation. It was an indictment of how far this saga has strayed from what fans were originally promised. Thomas wasn't alone. Chael Sonnen and other insiders have echoed the same sentiment. Jones versus Aspinall is not happening. Not now. And maybe never.
If you had to put your money on it, what do you think is the headliner of UFC 317?
If I had to put my money on it, I think they convinced Tom Aspinall to fight Cyril Gane.
Okay, that's.
I think if I had to put my money on it, I think that's the one that's being this far out. Like we're a couple weeks away.
2 months.
Yeah, we're 2 months out, and I think that they'll throw another number.
The circumstances that led here are murky at best, but one name keeps appearing at the center of the storm: Jon Jones. After dispatching Cyril Gane in embarrassingly quick fashion to win the vacant belt, Jones defended it once against a past his prime, Stipe Miocic, a fight that felt more like a nostalgic showcase than a true championship clash, and did little to prove Jones's dominance at heavyweight. Since then, there's been silence, the kind of silence that reeks of avoidance. Jones has cited injury and the need for a longer training camp, but those close to the situation see it differently. Many believe Jones is intentionally slow-playing the situation, watching, waiting, and calculating as if his legacy might somehow be better preserved by never stepping into the cage with the hulking, explosive, and well-rounded
Jon Jones that you saw will not be the Jon Jones that fights Tom Aspinall. Teddy Atlas. I had this conversation with Teddy, and I said, Coach, he's not missing. He's spinning around backwards where he can't even see the opponent. I don't think he missed a shot against Steve. When I spoke to Tom said he was watching slow motion. He said, I got all the respect for Steve, but he was simply too slow, and Jon was too slow. Not one of those spins, not one of those things would have
Thomas didn't pull any punches. Jon is a chess player, a very intellectual chess player, he said. Jones is trying to gather as much information on Tom Aspinall as possible since we haven't seen Aspinall in many tough spots, and no one knows how he'll respond under pressure. Thomas believes Jon is probably waiting to see that before committing. That doesn't sound like a champion hungry to unify belts. It sounds like a man stalling. Even worse, it paints a picture of a champion uncertain about his own standing. There's a sense that Jones is studying tape, waiting for someone else to find holes in Aspinall's game so he doesn't have to discover them the hard way. Guys, subscribe to my channel for more updates.